Welcome to Dialogue. If you're joining us today, chances are you're navigating a space that most people really try to avoid their entire lives. We're not talking about a rough quarter at work or a bad breakup.
No, this is different.
We're talking about a complete system-wide collapse. The moment when the core structures you spent years, maybe decades, building your health, your career, your finances, your key relationships, all seem to just give way
At the same time,
all at once. It's the dissolution.
it's what we call the 0 point. It's this moment of profound, almost terrifying emptiness where all the external noise just stops.
The deadlines, the social media pressure.
All of it, the expectations, the obligations, it's completely stripped away. And to the outside world, this looks like the end. It looks like definitive failure.
The end of the story.
Right. But the truth is, the person standing in those ruins has just received a brutal but very real invitation.
That invitation is really the core of what we want to get into today in this deep dive. Our mission here is to explore how you can flip that catastrophic moment.
And turn it into the most fertile ground you will ever stand on.
Exactly. We're looking at the mechanics of what happens when that loss actually provides a clarifying gift.
A gift. It sounds counterintuitive, but it is. It gives you perspective, urgency, and a kind of truth that you just can't access when things are going well.
And you use that to rebuild your life on a foundation that's actually stronger. It's rooted in real purpose this time.
This whole deep dive is about leveraging that loss. It forces a fundamental shift in perspective. You can no longer hide behind your job title or your bank account.
There's nothing left to hide behind.
Nothing. You have to turn inward. So we're going to map out how to shift your energy from grieving that external chaos to starting the internal foundational work that will honestly dictate the trajectory of your entire next chapter.
It's the ultimate paradox then. The absolute loss of everything can become the source of, well, unbreakable strength.
That's it exactly.
Okay, so let's really unpack this moment of total collapse. Most of us, we understand stress. We get that. But very few people grasp what happens when the entire stack just gives way.
It's a cascade failure.
Right. You lose the job, maybe the business you poured your soul into, the financial stability evaporates, and then the energy to even fight back is gone because your health has also failed you.
That's the key, the physical depletion.
So what is that profound realization that hits you when all that noise of life is finally truly stripped away?
It's the moment the grand self-deception comes crashing down.
What do you mean by self-deception?
For years, maybe your whole adult life, your identity was a carefully constructed external facade. Think about how you introduce yourself at a party.
Your job title.
Your title, your salary bracket, where you live, the perfect photos you post online, these are all external metrics. They're designed to signal value to other people.
And the collapse just obliterates them, all of them.
Instantly. And in that silence, you realize an essential, terrifying, but ultimately liberating truth. I am not my job.
I am not the number in my bank account.
I am not the sum of my past mistakes, and I'm definitely not defined by other people's approval or disapproval.
That moment must be just devastating because it's not just losing things, it's losing the story you told yourself about your own life.
It is. You realize you were chasing someone else's definition of success. The ego gets completely destroyed in that moment.
But something else takes its place.
The core self, the internal life, the soul, whatever you want to call it, the essential you, it finally takes center stage because it's all that's left.
It's the most raw, authentic version of yourself.
It is. We call it terrifying because for the first time, you have nowhere to hide. But that's also its power. The fear comes from seeing the vacuum, but the power comes from realizing that vacuum is clean. It's a blank slate.
You've mentioned this metaphor of a forest fire before. The external facade is the dead brush, and the collapse is the fire that clears it. What exactly does that fire clear out that was holding you back without you even knowing it?
Well, it clears out all the time sinks and the energy leaks that you didn't even realize were suffocating you.
Like what?
The toxic relationships built on status or convenience, the job that paid well but was slowly eroding your soul, the commitments you made out of obligation instead of genuine alignment.
Things you felt you had to do.
Exactly. The breakdown illuminates, often very painfully, what is truly non-negotiable in your life. And it usually comes down to three things: your health, your peace of mind, and your core authentic relationships.
This is where that idea of surrender becomes so important. And it sounds like a weakness. It sounds like giving up. If I've lost everything, the last thing I should do is surrender. I should fight.
And that's the misunderstanding of the term. Surrender, in this context, is an active choice. It's a leveraging mechanism, not defeat.
So what's the difference?
Defeat is passively accepting that your story is over. Surrender is actively transforming the pain into fuel. The turning point is when you stop fighting the reality of the situation.
You stop screaming, "Why me?"
You stop screaming, "Why me?" at the universe. You look at the debt, the health report, the empty contact list, and you just stop resisting it.
And you make a declaration instead.
You say, I accept where I am right now. These ruins, this 0 point is my new starting line. Now let me rise from here.
By accepting that painful reality, you instantly reclaim your energy.
You do. You stop wasting finite resources fighting the past, the grief, the resentment, the shame, and you convert that intense negative energy into controlled, directed action towards the future. You cannot start rebuilding until you stop resisting the foundation you've been given.
So the energy you're using to fight the past is the exact same energy you need to build the future. Surrender just liberates it.
Precisely. If you're stuck in resistance, you are constantly drained. When you accept the current facts, even the horrible ones, you're saying, this is the data I have. Now, what's the best possible next step I can take with this data?
You shift from being a victim to being a strategist.
That's the shift. It's the primary psychological function of surrender. And it's the absolute prerequisite for all the structural rebuilding that has to come next.
Okay, that transition from philosophical acceptance to the reality on the ground, that's where most people get stuck. You've accepted the collapse, but now you're just sitting in the silence.
And the silence is deafening.
It's deafening. The outside noise is gone, but the voice inside your head is relentless. It becomes a battlefield of doubt and fear.
Running catastrophic narratives 24/7. I'll never recover. I've ruined my life. I'm fundamentally broken.
And that internal chatter could be more paralyzing than any external problem.
It is the single most paralyzing force. If you don't secure your mind first, the rest of the work is impossible. The mind, even when it's fragile and exhausted, is still your single greatest tool for the rebuild. But it needs structure to function.
So the advice is always to start with a simple routine. But for someone whose life just dissolved, the idea of a routine can feel like just another thing to fail at.
Right, which is why we have to redefine it. We have to move past this idea that routine equals some kind of crushing military-grade discipline.
That's not what this is about.
Not at all. It's about using ordinary habits to create extraordinary sustainable transformation. When your external world is completely unpredictable, the bills, the health, the job search, you must build internal predictability.
It restores a sense of control.
A basic sense of agency. The feeling that you still control some things, no matter how small they seem.
So let's get specific. What's the lowest level structure we can build? We need anchors that are almost impossible to fail at.
It starts with your circadian rhythm. Wake up at the same time every day.
Even if you have nothing to do.
Especially if you have nothing to do. That single commitment signals to your subconscious. I'm still the operator of my schedule, not a reactor to circumstance. It stabilizes your hormones. It gives you a psychological starting line for the day.
And I remember reading about the brutal honesty of how hard this is. For the person who has been sleeping until noon, just fighting exhaustion, hitting a 7 a.m. alarm can feel like running a marathon.
It is a marathon for the nervous system, and you have to acknowledge that. You're fighting immense momentum. But the goal isn't to be productive. The goal is to create a small, repeatable anchor of success.
Okay, so you're up. What's next?
Immediate hydration and movement. 2 glasses of water and 5 minutes of slow, intentional stretching. Or just walking around your living room. Again, the goal is not a workout. It's an action you committed to and then completed.
And then we build in mental anchors.
Yeah.
You mentioned intentional consumption and reflection. What does intentional consumption mean here?
It means 2 things. First, fueling your body with nourishing food, not just comfort junk food, even if it's just one good meal a day. But second, and maybe more importantly, it means digital consumption. You have to schedule time for quiet, for reflection, journaling, meditating, or just sitting without a screen for 10 minutes. This is where you monitor the battlefield in your mind. You notice the fearful stories without having to engage with them.
And then there's the daily anchor of gratitude. This one can feel like a cliche, especially when your life is in shambles.
It can, but it's fundamental because it's neurological retraining. The gratitude isn't for the collapse. It's a deliberate, daily search for what is still functional.
You're training your brain to seek out positive data.
Exactly. The fact that you can breathe, a supportive text from a friend, a tiny improvement in your health, a memory of a past success. This simple structure tells your panic brain we are safe enough to plan for tomorrow because we still have functional systems.
So beyond that daily structure, there's this need to tune into what you call the inner voice of hope. In all that static of self-doubt, there's a quieter signal.
There always is. It's that raw intuition that hasn't been corrupted by fear or by what other people think. That voice is your future self calling you forward.
The version of you that's already on the other side of this?
Precisely. And it doesn't scream, "You're going to be a millionaire." It whispers, "Keep going. This is not your end. You still have value." Your job is just noise cancellation. You have to quiet the panicked, critical mind just enough to hear that calm, rational perspective.
And that leads directly to the concept of grace, which seems absolutely essential to stop this whole structure from collapsing under the weight of your own expectations.
If the collapse taught you anything, it's that life isn't about perfection. Rebuilding doesn't require perfection. It requires compassion. We see so many people who are high achievers demand that they become disciplined superhumans overnight after a crisis.
And that pressure is just counterproductive.
Completely. It sets you up for failure.
So practically, what does grace look like? How is it different from just, wallowing in self-pity?
Grace is acknowledging that your energy reserves are low and your emotional state is fragile. It looks like this. On Monday, you feel driven. You stick to your routine. You send out 5 job applications. You cook a healthy meal. That's a win.
Great day.
Great day. On Tuesday, you crash. You can barely get out of bed. You eat junk food and you cry for an hour. That is also a win.
Wait, how is the terrible Tuesday a win?
Because the act of showing up on Wednesday, even if it's just for a bare minimum 1% effort, is a profound act of loyalty to your future self. Grace allows you to acknowledge the failure of Tuesday without letting it derail the entire week.
It stops the downward spiral.
Exactly. Self-pity wallows in the failure of Tuesday and says, "See, I'm useless." Grace says, "Tuesday was tough. I forgive myself. Now, what's the smallest possible thing I can do on Wednesday?" It's the difference between a dip in the road and driving off a cliff.
We've established that the mental battle is primary. But trying to win that battle while your physical body is in crisis mode? That feels like a guaranteed path to failure.
It is. You can't win it. There's no sustainable comeback, no real mental reconstruction without the body functioning at least minimally.
Because the stress isn't just in your head.
Stress is physiological warfare. When you're under that much pressure, your body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. It's in a state of chronic activation. That depletes every system. Your digestion, your immunity, your energy.
And if you ignore that depleted physical battery to focus only on, say, your finances,
You guarantee you won't have the clarity or the energy you need when a real opportunity finally shows up. You'll be too burned out to seize it.
this brings us to a brilliant, really actionable strategy for starting the physical renewal. The smallest possible step. This idea directly tackles that intimidation factor that stops people.
It's designed to target the psychological barrier first. When you're depleted, the thought of an hour at the gym or cooking a complex, healthy meal is overwhelming. It feels like another mountain to climb.
Another way to fail.
Exactly. So the solution is to microdose success.
Let's get specific again. Beyond a 5-minute walk, what does a microdose success look like for someone with zero energy?
It might be replacing 1 soda with 1 glass of water. Just 1. It could be standing up and doing 10 deep breaths every time you check your phone. It could be committing to eat 1 piece of fruit every day.
Tiny, concrete, time-bound actions.
Almost impossible to fail at. And the genius of it is the mental victory. It shifts the entire narrative in your head from, "I am helpless and my body is broken," to, "I set a small goal and I achieved it."
That restoration of self-efficacy must be huge.
It's immense because healing, unlike the dramatic collapse, is quiet and consistent. It's not dramatic. You're just training your brain to associate physical action with positive reinforcement and a sense of control.
So once you've established a few of these micro-victories, you move into what you call intentional listening. The body whispers before it screams.
And in a crisis state, the body has been screaming for a while. Now, in the rebuild, you need to develop a sensitivity to the whispers again.
How do you even start that process when you're used to just ignoring it?
You move away from that hustle culture mindset of pushing through pain. You have to start asking key, honest questions multiple times a day. What nourishes me right now? What is draining me right now? What would genuinely strengthen me?
Can you give a specific example? What's the difference between something that drains versus something that strengthens in this context?
Okay. For someone rebuilding, doom scrolling the news for 2 hours might feel like you're staying informed.
Right, it feels productive.
But it's a massive drain. It spikes your anxiety and offers zero solutions. Strengthening, by contrast, might be using those 2 hours to watch a tutorial on a skill you want to learn. Both involve a screen, but one feeds fear and the other builds resilience.
And nourishment might just be saying no to things.
Absolutely. Nourishment might be saying no to a social event where you have to pretend everything is fine. That's draining. Choosing a quiet evening to just rest. That is strength through preservation.
And all of this feeds directly back into the mental recovery. This is the body-mind partnership.
It's a profound reciprocal loop, and it's based on chemistry.
Mm.
When you stabilize the body, when your blood sugar is level, you're hydrated, the tension in your shoulders eases, your brain physically reduces the production of stress hormones.
Less cortisol.
Less cortisol. This chemical shift literally allows your mind to access the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that makes rational decisions, which was basically offline during the panic phase.
So the mind finds a sliver of hope, because the body is no longer screaming danger.
Precisely. And the loop works the other way, too. When the mind starts to hope, when you engage in that structured belief and visualization we talked about, it has a measurable effect on the body.
How so?
That sense of agency, that positive framing, it accelerates physical recovery. It improves your immune response. It reduces inflammation. When your mind genuinely believes that a better outcome is possible, it stops flooding the body with survival hormones and allows it to shift into healing and repair mode.
So you have to stabilize the physical ground first.
You have to. The sleep, the nutrition, the gentle movement, that physical structure is the scaffolding. You can't rebuild a cathedral on a swamp.
Okay, let's talk about the element that, for many people, carries the most profound shame: the financial collapse.
It feels like the ultimate loss of control. It's visible, it's quantifiable.
And it often leads to just paralysis. If my entire financial world has vanished, where do I even begin?
First, we have to reframe it immediately. Financial failure is not a moral failing. It is not a sign of incompetence, even though society will pressure you to believe it is.
It's a system failure.
It's a system failure, and you are now the most qualified person to fix it because you have intimate, painful, first-hand knowledge of exactly where that system broke. You gain control not by magically replacing the money, but by rebuilding from knowledge, not from the illusion of stability you had before.
So, step one is triage. It's all about stabilizing the situation.
Immediate financial stabilization. Panic is the single greatest enemy of rational money management. You need a ruthless survival budget.
What does that actually look like?
It means cutting every single obligation to the absolute minimum. You have to make the hard phone calls. Call every creditor, every utility company, your landlord.
That's terrifying for most people. That initial act of confronting the debt must feel so humiliating.
It does, but you have to separate the shame from the necessity. The person on the other end of that phone line is just a gatekeeper for a process. They are not a judge of your character.
You have to treat it like a strategic negotiation.
That's all it is, a negotiation for the future solvency of your life. You ask for forbearance, for reduced payments, for any relief they can offer. The goal is to get your fixed costs as low as humanly possible. Then you track every single dollar.
That predictability, even with tiny numbers, is the antidote to anxiety.
It is. Stability leads to a feeling of safety. Safety leads to strength, and strength leads to momentum.
Which brings us to step two, the new money path. The temptation here is to just grab the first job you can get, right? Even if it's soul-crushing.
The panic job, yes. And we can't ignore the reality that sometimes that's necessary. The rent is due. So how do you balance the need for immediate income with the goal of building something purposeful and sustainable?
You have to think in two phases. Phase one is the bridge job. That is the temporary immediate income source you take for survival. It's a means to an end, not your new identity.
But the work on phase two starts immediately.
The moment you have that bridge job, phase two begins. You must start building your new foundational path while working the survival job. If you don't, you just guarantee the next collapse will happen down the line.
So the purposeful path isn't some magical leap you take later. It's a concurrent project.
Exactly. And it demands intense introspection. You need a detailed inventory of your assets. What tangible skills do I possess, even from my failed life?
Skills you might not even recognize as skills.
Right. Were you a great scheduler, a clear communicator, a creative problem solver? Then you look at the market. What can I learn quickly? Coding, digital marketing, a technical skill.
And then the most critical question, What brings me a sense of quiet joy? And is there a way to monetize the intersection of that joy and what the market actually values? That's the sweet spot. The goal is to build a life that fulfills you, not just one that pays you enough to tolerate it. Maybe you were a stressed executive who secretly loved organizing systems. Your new path might not be managing a huge team, but being a fractional operations consultant for small businesses.
Which gives you more control, more meaning, and probably more time.
And it's rooted in something resilient, not just a high salary that demands 80 hours a week and destroys your health all over again.
Finally, there's step 3, the small win strategy. This seems purely psychological, designed to fight that crippling financial panic.
It is. Panic paralyzes you into doing nothing, so we have to combat it with small, celebrated victories. We must celebrate the first $20 you managed to save.
Not because it's a lot of money.
No, but because that $20 is proof of control. You celebrate the first freelance gig you land because that is proof of your market value. You're literally rewiring your brain's neural pathways away from fear and toward positive reinforcement.
Can you give an example of a neurological win versus just a monetary one?
A monetary win is paying off a small debt. A neurological win is making a planned financial choice like deciding to cook at home instead of getting takeout and feeling calm about it, not deprived or panicked.
That's a big one.
It's huge. Or even more profound, celebrating the first full day you get through without that paralyzing knot of financial anxiety in your stomach. These small wins prove that your actions lead to safety, not to more catastrophe.
Let's transition to what is often the rawest element of a collapse.
Yeah.
The relationships. When you're in the ruins, you naturally turn to your people for support.
You expect them to be there.
And when they're not,
Yeah.
when you lose friends, when family connections fray, it feels like a profound betrayal on top of everything else.
It's a second collapse, an emotional one. You discover that the crowd really does disperse when the spotlight of success turns off.
But the way this is framed is as a painful yet necessary purification.
It is, and understanding why people leave is essential for your own emotional healing, because often their departure has very little to do with your actual worth.
Okay, so let's analyze the reasons. Why do these connections depart when things get really tough?
The first reason, and this is the most charitable one, is that they simply don't have a framework for your experience. They've never been through a true dissolution, so they can't comprehend the vacuum you're in.
So they offer simplistic, unhelpful advice.
Exactly. The toxic positivity. Just be positive. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And when that, of course, doesn't work, they retreat because your reality challenges their own comfortable worldview.
Your struggle makes them uncomfortable.
Deeply. And the second reason is even more profound. Your transformation is a threat to them.
How so?
Your collapse and your subsequent attempt to rebuild from scratch reflects the fragility of their own system back at them. If they've defined themselves by their high-status job or their perfect family, your vulnerability exposes the lie of their own security.
It forces them to confront their own limitations.
Or their own precarious dependence on external things. And rather than face that, it's easier to avoid you, or worse, to judge you.
So fundamentally, the people who leave were tethered to the old you, the facade.
They were. The relationships were often transactional, built on mutual success or convenience, not on core authenticity. The pain of their departure reveals their limitations, and it acts as a filter. It's a shedding of weight that would have held you back.
Let's focus on the positive side of this, then. The people who remain and the new relationships that start to form. The new, authentic tribe.
Those who stay, they are your real tribe. They might be few, they might be messy and imperfect themselves, they might not know what to say.
That they show up.
They show up. Maybe with a meal or just for an hour of silent company. Your future circle will be smaller, but it will be so much deeper, more aligned, more authentic.
You trade 50 acquaintances who know your job title for 5 people who know your deepest fears.
And your highest intentions. That shift happens because the person who is rebuilding no longer has the energy for superficiality. You're too busy, too depleted to wear a mask anymore.
And that authenticity becomes a magnet.
A powerful magnet. You start attracting new people who value that depth. Other people who are also rebuilding or healing or dreaming. People who are living lives rooted in meaning, not ego.
So in these new relationships, the entry fee isn't success. It's shared scars.
It's shared scars and a mutual respect for the struggle. They become the most meaningful relationships of your life because they understand the true cost of the ground you're standing on. They don't need you to pretend you're doing great.
They value you because you're showing up messy and determined.
Precisely. This purification is brutally hard, but the support system it leaves you with is genuinely unbreakable.
We've navigated the practical and the emotional fallout. We've cleared the field. Now we face the final internal hurdle. That fundamental question, who am I now?
When all the external labels are gone, the career, the status, the old definition of success,
And we have to frame this moment not as a loss, but as a liberation.
it's the great opportunity. For most of your adult life, your identity was probably defined by external pressure. What your parents expected, what the job market rewarded, what your peers were doing.
You were playing a role.
Many roles. And when that whole stage collapses, you're left with a core insight. Your inherent worth is independent of your performance or your possessions. The collapse forces you into a conscious, powerful choice to build a new identity, this time from truth.
Let's dig into that idea of liberation. What specific personas are shed that people don't even realize they're carrying?
Oh, so many. You shed the good student persona, who only operates based on getting an A+ or a good performance review.
A need for external validation.
Yes. You shed the successful workaholic who equates exhaustion with self-worth. You shed the social status keeper who is constantly seeking approval through what they buy or where they're seen.
And maintaining those roles takes an incredible amount of energy.
A tremendous amount. The liberation is realizing how much energy you are spending just keeping up that false facade. That energy is now free to build something real.
So how do you move from that painful void to actively crafting a new self? It can't be a passive process.
No, it's an intentional construction. It's an intellectual and spiritual exercise built on truth. You have to ask the big questions that were drowned out by the noise of your old life. And it starts with values.
Not the values society tells you to have.
No, the ones that feel absolutely essential to your character now. What do I want to embody every single day?
What are some of the foundational values that tend to emerge in this phase?
Often they center around things like resilience, integrity, curiosity, and service, and you have to make them active. If you choose integrity as a core value, then every decision from how you talk to a creditor to how you talk to yourself must align with that.
The values drive the choices.
They do, and after values, you look at the actual structure of the life you want. What does the texture of my daily existence look like?
That's a great phrase, the texture of my daily existence.
It's more important than the job title. What schedule allows me to heal? What environment fosters my creativity? What level of social interaction sustains me rather than depletes me? And the big one, what do I want to give?
The focus shifts from taking to contributing.
From taking income, status, approval to contribution. And this all gets anchored in what we call quiet joy.
Not loud, consumption-driven pleasure.
No, quiet joy is sustainable. It's the satisfaction of a meaningful conversation, the pride in making something with your own hands, the peace that comes from a simple routine. It's an internal well-being that is completely impervious to an external collapse.
When people successfully go through this profound rebuilding, where they typically end up, what are the common paths?
It's remarkable how consistent it is. We see a mass migration toward fields defined by meaning and purpose, not by maximum profit or status.
Like what?
They gravitate toward the healing professions, creative entrepreneurship, direct service work, teaching, or deep spiritual and emotional growth.
Why that intense pull towards contribution and creation?
Because the collapse starved the ego. The need to impress people is gone. The need for external validation is gone. What's left is the universal human need for meaning, connection, and contribution.
So a life founded on meaning, even if it's monetarily modest, is more resilient.
Infinitely more resilient than a life built on ego, which is perpetually vulnerable to market forces and the opinions of others. They end up building lives that directly serve their deepest values. And often their new purpose becomes helping other people navigate the very pain they just endured.
Okay, the internal work is done. The emotional triage is complete. Now, we need the blueprint for sustained forward motion, because when you're starting from zero, the idea of rebuilding everything at once is just paralyzing.
It is, which is why we turn to a simple but profound solution, the 1% rule.
Improving by just 1% each day.
It's the most generous and effective way to approach massive change. If your life needs a 100% overhaul, aiming for that 100% perfection on day one leads to immediate, painful burnout.
But 1% a day seems so small, almost negligible.
It feels small, but its power is in compounding. Let's just break down the math for a second.
Please do.
If you get 1% better today than you were yesterday, and you keep that up for a year, you are not 365% better. You are nearly 37 times better than where you started.
Wow.
And the most beautiful part of this is that 1% is achievable. Even on the days you feel completely depleted, you can find a 1% improvement somewhere.
Give us some microdosed examples of the 1% rule in action applied to the different areas we've talked about.
In finance, 1% better might mean tracking your expenses for just 5 minutes today, or making one call to a creditor you've been avoiding.
In health,
It's doing 2 extra minutes of stretching, or drinking one additional glass of water. In skill development, it's learning one new term in your desired field, or writing one paragraph of a cover letter.
it transforms the overwhelming goal of rebuild my entire life into the manageable task of improve this one small thing today.
It's consistent, gentle evolution.
Now, to maintain that 1% momentum and stop yourself from just drifting, you need some form of accountability. This leads to the weekly rebuild ritual.
Yes, growth cannot be accidental. It has to be intentional. A weekly review is the mechanism for staying aligned with your new purpose, especially when the outside world is still chaotic.
And it has to be a non-negotiable block of time.
Absolutely. An hour on a Sunday evening, for instance. And it has 3 specific components. First, you review your goals and adjust your direction.
So you look at the tangible goals from last week.
The job applications, the financial tracking, the physical routine, and you course correct slightly. If a routine didn't work, you don't abandon it. You just adjust the time or the activity. It's constant iterative refinement. You're always asking, how can I make next week 1% more effective?
Component 2 is the crucial step of celebrating wins.
This is non-negotiable. You must look back and consciously acknowledge everything you did right, no matter how small.
Did you stick to your wake-up time 5 out of 7 days?
That's a win. Did you have one difficult conversation with integrity? Win. Did you resist an impulse to panic spend? Huge win. This positive reinforcement fuels the motivation for the next week.
And the final component ties it all back to the new identity. Reconnecting with purpose.
You check in with those core values you defined. Are my actions this week aligned with the person I want to become? Am I living with integrity, with resilience? If you see a misalignment, you gently adjust course for the next week. This ensures you're building a life of meaning, not just reacting to emergencies.
Let's talk about vision and faith in this context, because it's so important to distinguish this from just passive wishful thinking.
That distinction is paramount. We're defining faith here as disciplined belief. Wishful thinking is passive. It just waits for something good to happen. Disciplined belief is active. It creates the conditions for good things to happen.
How do you make it active?
You start by writing down the life you want in detail. When you write it, you make the path explicit. Then you speak it. You verbalize your intentions, maybe to your small, authentic tribe. That makes it more real.
And then visualization. How is
Yeah.
that different from daydreaming?
When you visualize, you are actively creating mental blueprints. This is neuroscience. You're programming your brain's reticular activating system to filter the world and notice opportunities that are aligned with that vision.
So disciplined belief is having the courage to act as if the outcome is already guaranteed.
Even when the current evidence says the opposite.
Because your daily 1% actions are meticulously aligned with creating that outcome.
You're not waiting for the world to change. You are actively changing your internal world to attract and recognize the opportunities that will fulfill the vision you wrote down. It's the ultimate act of preventing self-sabotage.
So everything we've talked about has been the deep, often invisible work happening underground, the roots, the stabilization, that 1% effort. Then this is the moment the first green shoe finally breaks the surface. We see the comeback moment in movies as this loud, sudden, victorious event. But the reality is much quieter.
It's rarely dramatic. It is quietly powerful, and it's often completely unnoticed by the outside world. The person has spent months, maybe years doing the consistent work, and then one day, something just subtly shifts.
An opportunity appears.
And it appears not because you desperately chased it out of fear, but because your newly aligned identity and your new skill set naturally attracted it. You become a magnet for what you actually value.
Instead of a frantic seeker of external validation.
Precisely. Or a new relationship forms that is exactly the kind of authentic partnership you need. Or, even more internally, a new energy rises inside you. It's not the frantic, sharp energy of panic.
It's steady.
It's a steady, confident purpose. You realize you got through an entire day working toward your goals without once having to actively fight that internal voice of self-doubt.
It's like a slow accumulation of small, almost mundane changes that suddenly hits a critical mass. The seed breaks open.
And the life process becomes unstoppable. The person who emerges from those ruins is fundamentally different. They're not the same person who collapsed. They're defined by what they have overcome, not by what they lost. They're grounded in truth, not illusion.
So what is the final result? The essence of this new identity after navigating that complete dissolution?
The people who rebuild from absolute zero become kinder. They become kinder because they understand the raw reality of human suffering and fragility, and they can see that struggle in other people.
Well, you become braver.
They become braver because they have already faced their greatest fears: financial ruin, profound loneliness, a health crisis, and they survived. There's very little left to be afraid of.
And they become wiser.
Wiser because they learned the true, hard-won lessons of accountability, of authenticity, and of real resilience.
And ultimately, they become unbreakable.
Unbreakable because they now possess the deep cellular knowledge that if they can survive the dissolution of every external support structure they had, their job, their bank account, their entire perceived self, they can fundamentally survive anything. Their source of strength is now internal. It can never be taken away from them again.
The destruction of the old life
Was simply the preparation for this new, unbreakable self.
If life has taken everything from you and we know that pain is so real and so deep, please try to understand this. The collapse was not your destruction. It was your preparation. It was preparation for the person you are fundamentally meant to become, the version of yourself built entirely on core truth and resilience.
You are not starting from zero. You are starting from experience. And that hard-won knowledge, the insight into your true values, the understanding of resilience, the clarity of a purified vision, that is the most powerful foundation of all. Your comeback will not be your recovery. It will be your masterpiece. And when you rise, because you will understand precisely why everything had to fall apart first.
This is your new beginning, and it is going to be beautiful.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please like, subscribe, and share this video. Also, let us know in the comments what really stood out to you in this conversation, and if there's any related topic or new topic that you would like covered in a future video.